Moving to oneness. Nourishing curiosity. Embracing differences. Becoming one.
Are you a being that is uncomfortable being in the dark? No more. My guest today went into the depths of the earth to become comfortable with it and bring up ancient wisdom so you can be more comfortable in the dark and look even into it for yourself and pull out gems that are only yours. Hello, everyone. I'm Mylene Elke, your host of the Moving to Oneness podcast. And today I have my guest who's sitting in Dubai, even though he is from Denmark. He really is a world traveler, lives in many spots of the world, I would say, is comfortable everywhere he is. That is really important. And he goes into connection with the most ancient, and that's the stone, right? Our first ancestor here in our material world. Hello, Mateo. I'm so happy that you're here. I've told you before, I'm so excited that we're speaking because when we met before, you also were interested to be just in the moment and let arise what comes out. And somehow I'm feeling that magic is happening, has been happening, is happening, and will be happening with us coming together and whoever is listening to this episode. So once more, hello, Mateo.
Hello, Mylene. Pleasure to be here. I'm excited too.
Yeah, you have a beautiful name. We were just talking about it, that you have a rhythm in your name. You're using also your middle name. You feel, or I felt when you spoke it, there is a rhythm to it. And the rhythm already brings change and tells so much about you, as also you name yourself. So his name, everyone, is Arian Mateo Tabatabai.
Correct.
And just when I say Tabai, something happens. So it is, you take someone on a journey with your name, Mateo. I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you go there because just recently, as part of a men's group I'm in, we were invited to go deeper into the meaning of our names. And I've always known the meaning of my name, but the invitation here was that our names really are holding something for us. It's a code that we can open throughout a lifetime. And so I looked deeper into my name, and it was quite astounding how much it fits. So Aryan comes from the root of nobility or purity. That's what it usually refers to. And Indo-Iranian people. So my ethnicity is Iranian. So it refers to purity or honor, nobility, which are qualities I very much resonate with, and they're very important for me to hold in my life, and
Mhm.
especially honor and integrity. Mateo comes from God's gift, the gift of Yahweh. So there is a God's gift or God's blessing. I knew that. I chose that name actually when I was 18. So that's a name I
Mhm.
chose as my middle name. And Tabatabai is a lineage name that goes back to the Prophet Muhammad. So it has a direct lineage all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad. It's a branch called Sayyids, and in Shia Islam, it's a branch of different surnames that go directly back to the source. So there are many mystics, there are many guardians of spiritual knowledge, apparently with this surname. I wasn't aware of that until just a few days ago. So going through my name, I somehow resonated with this energy a lot. And it was nice to feel how comfortable I feel with my name these days because my first name, Arian, it took me like almost a decade to unpack that and become comfortable with it.
Beautiful. So, so many, spiraling things through my head. When you already started with purity, that's how I sense you. You bring the pure principles, and you also in Mateo, what is in there, these ancient, for me again, it comes these ancient cosmic, I mean, they're not ancient because they're present and they will always will be, but you carry them in you. And I think that's also what you went out and set out to look for, right? You in your 20s, you mentioned you had been very successful in your life, but something was missing. And I think living that part of you, that your purpose, you went out to understand better. And our name, yes, is very important. And some of us can maybe be rather mad to our parents or whatever when we're teenagers or early 20s. But they picked the right name.
Yes.
There is something about it. Some have it right away, some look for it for a long time. Myself too, it was, I don't know, my son was maybe 12 years ago. Then suddenly I understood my name fully. But it went and took me on a search. Mine is Chinese, Mylene, right? So I learned so much about the Chinese culture because I wanted to learn about it. But it carries the history of my parents in it and how they met. Then Elke, for the longest time, I didn't know where it came from, this name. Very few people have it. And I learned then it is a very old name. It comes from the Pommern up north. And many of the Elkis left 1800s to Brazil or South America or North America. And there I could find more Elkis. But then I also saw Elohim and key energy. I never cannot use my hands and heal Mylene, the connection line next to being a landscape architect and being interested in beauty. That's what it carries as well. And also then Esther, I never used. I thought it was too biblical. I was always mad since a little girl at the church because I felt confined. Mateo, like you, I could feel that things are not true, and I have to find what is really the way to be. But then I looked into Esther, and I thought, oh, that's Easter. And I'm often had my birthday on the Easter weekend, so it's always the Friday before Easter, Karfreitag. I forgot the name, what it's called in English, and then one Easter, I was all alone. I uncovered everything. It came, and like it is fruitive. It has to do with the awakening of nature. It has to do with giving birth, right? And then there was the Ostern, we say the Ostara, but the Ostara and Esther in English. That's where the Esther comes from the English direction. And then I looked into the Persian meaning. And I thought, oh my God, that really blew also then again once more my mind. And it was all about stars and light and being bright and seeing the sparkle of the world. I really then I've slowly moved into, but as a little girl, I always didn't want to be called Mylene because they all called me Elke, which is a first name, and used Mylene as my last name. And I said, oh, I want to marry a German guy, and when I was little, did marry a German. And I also, my name now is Ankermann, but I keep Mylene Elke in my work because that's who I am. And my husband anchored me then. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
This is right. This is very nice, but it is so important that we take the time. And I do look automatically onto names, but it's not like I go and look. Suddenly it pops up. The importance, it's like a pulse. It is, again, like a rhythm that we can't, that attracts. So I can see a person even deeper, really quick. It's like a zoom.
Yeah, 100%. I came from being a very skeptical, rational kind of mindset, which I think is pretty normal, especially in Scandinavia. It's more focused on rationality, quote unquote, scientific thinking, etc. And I can only say that God, for lack of better word, has just broken this heart open again and again
Mm.
and again so many times to the fact that nothing is coincidence, and this great mystery is both perfectly orchestrated and perfectly humorous at the same time. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. I
Even
fully
even in the
agree.
most painful things, sometimes there can be, of course, not when we're in it, we can have compassion for ourselves and others as we are transitioning, but even in those most painful instances, there can often be found a hint of cosmic humor and just the perfection of it in a sense. Things make sense once we start connecting on a deeper soul level, even though they may not make sense to our mind. Why am I going through this? Or why am I struggling with this particular thing for a few decades now? On a soul level, we can connect with, I know why, right? There can be this soul knowledge. I know what it is I'm meant to learn, or what it is I need to give up. And I love that. I mean, how can you not love existence and life and the beauty of whatever this is, whatever life is?
Yeah, I laugh and smile a lot as well, and notice people that really see the world and other beings and people and humanity and nature, animals with curiosity are very happy, and they
Yes.
giggle a lot. It has to do with our heart opening, and you mentioned that. That's really, people look for enlightenment, but there it starts at the heart. Once it opens up, it becomes brighter and brighter, more energy, more light can flow in and flow out. Makes it so bright, and then it moves as we experience different frequencies and different vibrations. It moves through our body, and then fully we glow. And I have to go into that now directly. You went in to caves, into darkness. These are ancient rituals. You can see that in every tribe. I had two teachers that spoke about it very deeply. One was a druid, right? Even in England, they go into a cave, and he did an experience with us. We didn't have a cave at that time, but we went into created a dark space. I had a teacher where I learned from the Yoruba traditions, the African traditions. They also put people in a cave, and for a few days here in Europe, that well, right? Even there where you maybe don't have mountainous, they sometimes dig holes, or they go into snow, or they make like a sweat lodge, for example. You can make it really dark. And what happens in there, it is so dark. But I want to ask you to share more of this and what you've experienced. Some have maybe for a few hours experienced a sweat lodge, but I know also in India you can go in for 9 months, all your teeth fall out, but new ones regrow. So what brought you into that? What pulled you? Because there must have been a really, really strong pull, otherwise you would have not done or gone there to do that.
Yeah. I think as it is for many of us on the spiritual path, there is what can be called a kind of enlightenment drive or a self-actualization drive in all of us as human beings. And for those of us on the spiritual path, for whatever reason, that self-actualization drive is more accelerated, it's more active, which is what makes it hard for us to just function in the usual situations that many people, we look at them and we're like, how can they do that? Well, because the self-actualization drive in us has awakened to such a degree, it will not allow anything anymore. It's too painful, the contrast is too painful to just ignore the calling of the soul. So it was definitely a very strong enlightenment drive that I was born with. I mean, I came in since I was 6 or 7. I was doing spiritual inquiries, even though My family was very materialistic, didn't have a bone of explicit spirituality in them, at least, and part a lot of pain, which again I think it is for many of us on the path, right? There is a longing
Yes.
to come home, to find. There's a feeling I lost touch with something and I need to refine it because it's so precious, so valuable, whatever that is. So
This urging, and you're right. I think so. Of many of our cultures, we have lost the true rituals that we get taught already when we're a child, or the biggest trauma you work also with trauma is really not being recognized with the gift we came here onto this earth. So if you would have been in a functioning tribal setting, and if you're lucky, your parent or the whole tribe recognizes within your first 24 hours why you're here and what
yeah,
you're bringing, and then you're being supported in exploring your gifts and taught and trained to really hone it. It's a craft. But many of us, we come in, many of us are ancient or old lineages, like you, with many, many healers. Many of our ancestors have not lived it, too much wars, and you had to, that's a whole different other story. But we had to go out and find ourselves. And that's so fascinating that it is really this urge since you're tiny that you go on look for it, and that we know already as a child. So everyone out there, keep on looking and dive into the most awkward places in the world to find people or information. And your body gives you a lot of information of where to go. So did your body help you move a lot into that direction, Mateo?
yeah, I would say it was a well, in there is this story that they sometimes use in the spiritual traditions, like excuse me, there is this story in the spiritual traditions where a seeker goes to a teacher and says to the teacher, please teach me. I'm ready to do whatever, and I want to get enlightened, or I want to find myself. And the teacher says, okay, well, come back tomorrow at 12 noon, be here, and I'm going to teach you. So the student comes back the next day, and they're next to the river bank, and the teacher says, follow me into the water. They go into the water, and the teacher grabs the head of the student, puts it under the water, and just holds him down there, almost to the point where the student almost is fainting because he cannot breathe. And in the last moment, he lets his head kind of pull out of the water. And the teacher said, so when you were under the water, what did you want the most? What were you thinking of? And he said, the only thing I was thinking of was breathing. I wanted to breathe. And the teacher says, when you want enlightenment that much, then come back to me. So it was that kind of fire that was present in me. It was I don't know what it is I'm looking for, but I know I have to find it. There is no other choice, and I don't care what I have to go through. It was that kind of fire that was driving me. And I heard about dark retreats, and I had a very bold 20-year-old mind that said, why not? Of course, I can do that without thinking too much about it, which can be very risky, but luckily it went well.
Luckily, it went well, but it does go well when it has a reason, right? Because it's not just what I remember in my first sweat lodge, I'm more present. I just speak things out or act, the body acts. But it was so dark, you could open your eyes and you saw visions, and I see energy lines. So I saw energy lines, light, colors. And I thought, okay, it is there to tell me, but I had to experience this. You can't be taught this, right? You have to recognize a similar that I do see, and that it's nothing that the mind tricks me, and I don't have to close my eyes to be connected. I also can have my eyes open to be connected. That's what it gave to me, and that even in darkness, there is an array of energy flowing through. So you weren't just put into a darkness, you really chose it. So you probably went with a more relaxed mindset, is the wrong word. More
Yes,
calmer
100%.
into the darkness. What happened? Can you share a little bit? It's probably hard to understand for many, but could you share a little bit what you went through and what you came out with? Because I think that leads you now. There's a certain something that it did to you that you're presenting in your beingness at the moment.
Yeah, it's I mean, I did more than 100 days in dark retreats. My first one was 14 days, and my main one was 49 days. That was the longest one I did. And after the 49-day one, I could say, so just to give people at home some context, so it's pitch dark. You cannot see how many fingers you're holding in front of your hand, in front of your face. You remove all light sources, which is actually much more difficult than one would think because there are so-called light leaks. Once it gets dark enough, you start seeing that light is leaking in from all sorts of small places. So you, on the practical side, you fill out all light leaks. So there is zero light coming in. 30% of the calorie intake we use on a day-to-day level is used by the visual cortex. So because you're not using your visual cortex, you're not seeing anything, you don't get that hungry. You need less calories. And because I wasn't moving a lot, I wasn't eating a lot. And once the spiritual energies really kick in, you usually aren't that hungry. So I was eating a few pieces of fruit each day and maybe a small, like a protein bar or a nutritional bar just to get something. I had stored all this in my house, and once a week I had a helper, a dear sister who was helping me. She would come once a week and just leave some food for me. There was a double door system. She would open one door, set the food, close it, so no light ever comes in. So that's a little bit of the kind of context. Now, what goes on in there is the first couple of days you have huge spike of melatonin, so there's just a lot of rest. You want to sleep a lot. Around day 7, 8, 9, you start having very high spikes of DMT. So you're basically on a full trip. There is very high doses of endogenous chemicals that are helping you process, helping you connect. When I mean trip for me is not something fake. It just means you're in an altered state of consciousness compared to your day-to-day consciousness. And when I came out of that 49-day retreat, I meant it. I said I could write a few books about what happened in here. The main things that happened was a profound and very painful healing at the time. I was processing a lot of pain in there because when you remove all distractions, you get to really feel your soul state. You cannot hide from yourself. And you don't even have the distraction of checking your phone and or calling a friend or even journaling. I mean, you can journal, but you don't see what you're writing. So all distractions are gone. And pretty quickly, my mind just went, oh, I guess I just have to accept that I have to face everything because I cannot do anything else. So there was a huge upheaval and release of pain. The pain body was purifying a lot. There's a huge influx of light because I mean, we are all going to be receiving huge amounts of light if we make ourselves available. We don't have to go to a dark retreat. If we remove distractions, the light starts just flooding and exposing and awakening. So there was a huge influx of light, many deep ego deaths, deep states of meditation, initiations. I received a very powerful initiation from what was one of my primary masters, who left his body. He had already left his body, and he became my master in the inner realms for several years after he gave me an initiation. So it can be hard to understand for people who haven't had experiences like that. They might say, well, it's just imagination or something. But these visions, these initiations are as real as anything else you would experience in quote unquote normal life. And more importantly, their transformative
Mm.
effect they really remove anxiety, pain, fear, open the heart. They change you in day to day practical living.
Wow, also that the determination to find yourself, because you could have just opened. There are others where they do put you deeply in a cave and lead you and can't get out. You did it by yourself. You also stayed in there by yourself, and you stayed and stayed and stayed. This shows me dedication to yourself. I would say the word extreme. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
The people gone into caves for 21 days. I know there are llamas that sit along, but they're not in the dark. What did you do when you came to that point, or at the end? When did you know it was over? So there must have been small moments, but then you were in an altered state, and you went in a way also like it's like a vision quest, right? That you stayed, and time flies anyway, or there is no time. And it's like some people here in Germany, they go into a cave and come out years later because they went through certain warpholes. You opened yourself up to be a connection line to whatever you needed. When did you know it was done?
I had decided beforehand to do 49 days. And one of the
Mhm.
things I decided to do, I had an alarm that would go on every 24 hours. I was taking certain vitamins also. So that was not only my reference point to have some kind of reference point to quote unquote reality, to 3D reality, but also just to get nutrition. So I would take vitamin D and stuff. I had prepared them in packages before I went in. So I had that alarm go on every 24 hours. And in my mind, I would keep a counter. And I think that was a very good decision that I did that because 3D reality disappeared so much that that was kind of my only grounding into 3D
Mhm.
reality. So I would have like in my mind, in 7 days, my sister is bringing me food and fruits. Okay. So I kind of had these little orientation points in there that would keep me grounded enough. But after 49 days, I didn't want to come out. I actually said, I can just stay here 6 to 12 months. What's the point of me even coming out when this is the most significant and meaningful work I could be doing? I'm doing deep soul work. And luckily, my inner master told me, you have to go out. And it's smart to not make decisions when you're in that altered state of consciousness, right? Because you're not very connected to 3D. So after I came out after 49 days, of course, I was struck by the beauty of life as I came
Oh,
out. That's the senses and the trees. It was on a mountain, so that I was surrounded by trees and nature, and just feeling very touched by what a gift this 3D existence is.
yes, it is.
Tears and crying and joy, celebration. And it took me 3 to 4 weeks to really re-embody fully. My soul was just on a different plane of existence. So I'm very happy I got out because if I'd stayed in 6 to 12 months, I may not have ever been able to fully reintegrate back into 3D.
It gets hard. I remember I read once a book. Someone went the Great Lakes in the US in the north, um, and he took a canoe and went for I think 2 months
Hmm.
and paddled once around the edge. And then at the end, he said, you after a while, you get to hear and hear better. Your eyes get more sensitive. Mm, you see further. You see energy different. You water. I mean, you become. We should have more of us to be in
Yes.
that kind of state, right? The perception changes, and the tones. And when he came then out back, the problem for him was all the noise, for example, that suddenly is that time we still had telephones with, you picked up a Hörer, I don't know. And so they rang really loud, or the honking or of a car or a bus that came by, or someone was screaming. So it also takes a long time to adjust. But you never adjusted back, probably, right? You do connections to your prior life? You've been also um, interested in engineering and psychology, right? How the mind functions, which is very analytical. But then you went into the altered. It's not an altered state. It's a state we can be in. It's our natural state,
Yes.
right? That's really how we're moving back there.
Yes.
That more
Yes.
and more of us are more and more moments in that state. Maybe even you don't have to go into the sun, everyone. You can look at the sun, you can look at the moon, you can look at a flower for a long time, you can look at a person and go into such deep connection to feel the expansion. Oh, expansion. Your mother also told you not to expand too much. So do you expand now much more, or do you feel with expansion? Are you directing it now to work with others and support yourself and others?
Yeah, I love the point about this not being an altered state. It is our natural state. That is a very important point. So it's an altered state from the perspective of our normal 3D consciousness. And our normal 3D consciousness is a very altered state, actually. We often get it the other way around, but to walk around in normal ego consciousness is a totally altered state of hallucination because we're hallucinating all sorts of sufferings and things that are entirely mind created. Of course, life itself has real sufferings like disease and death, and those those pains are real, but 99% of our pains are mind generated. So if you really look at it in, let's say, a rational, objective soul vision, we see that our normal state of consciousness is a deep state of altered consciousness. So this transition is actually sobering out of that altered state of consciousness and becoming more sober and resting into that natural state that is pure bliss, contentment, peace, clarity. While there can be pains, it's not exclusive of the suffering of being a human being, also. It includes that. It just doesn't add to it with a lot of stories and hallucinations and resistances. In terms of expansion, yes, in one sense, we can realize our natural state beyond all expansion and contraction. That's one level of the awakening process. So, and no matter what is going on, no matter how much suffering I go through in the 3D reality or how great I do, it doesn't add or take away anything from my spirit, that spirit nature that I am. And the next level of that is, and I can embody ever greater states of expansion and love. So as human beings, we get to kind of go into both of these developments. One is the causeless state, or the nirvana, we could call it, the nirvanic realization beyond everything. And the other is the embodiment of that Buddha nature or that love into more and more dimensions of our existence so that we become ever more skillful and have ever more flexibility in dealing with everything. So that when I go down to the cashier, or when I'm doing a podcast, or I'm talking with my daughter or my loved ones, um, how I deal with money, how I deal with everything can become more and more an expression of that clarity, of that love, of that attunement to the whole.
So beautifully expressed. The mind becomes quiet. I think that's what the people understand or desire with a quiet mind. It is not only then in meditation, where you choose to sit and be quiet, but it turns into your whole life becomes this way. I have to say, you rarely the mind chatter becomes less and less, and you recognize the thoughts you do then think or feel, embody. They're needed. They need
Yes.
to be spoken. They need to be acted on. So need, I mean, it's not like you're pushing need, but the environment needs it, or I need it, someone else needs it. So there is no censoring of the own person, which hurts a lot. You were speaking about the pains. So when the censoring of oneself or the suffering, where is mostly because someone doesn't understand us, or we don't share enough about ourselves to teach them how we think, how we act, what touches us. And I think, as humanity, we're learning that again. Community, communication toward others. Oh, that just comes. Those two words belong together. Community and communication. Uh, Right. So communication, not just only the words, but communication with the lights that go through our eyes, the communication, the energy that flows from heart to heart, the one of touch, the just being present with someone, even if no word is said. Yeah. So it's coming more, and every act is an impeccable act. Okay, that's maybe a little very shamanic, but that's what I've trained to go to. And if I look at the ancient ones that have lived several centuries, they become much more uh, quiet, because in a way there's also no waste of energy. You spoke about that when that was really fascinating to hear that, Matteo, that we don't use so much energy if we don't see. That also tells us how important it is and how much information we take on. I would just like to highlight something. I'm very connected to birds, and I'm a little girl, or even more. And sometimes I also think because of one of my teachers, his father was a very, very connected to birds. But I can drive down the street, even if I brought my son to school, and as a bird, I sense him. My whole body turns, my head turns, and I just acknowledge him with a second with my eyes. And then that's all is needed. And I go back and concentrate on driving and keeping the car on the road. This is what's going to happen more. So, do we use our eyes enough? Do we relax our eyes enough? So, in a way, this darkness retreat, everyone could do a little bit for half an hour, and just explore it, right? But it also is not just to push oneself to the next limit. Yeah, one could see it there. To give ourselves relaxation, to give ourselves. There's a whole different feeling to it, right? You could approach it from two ways. And I love that when you mentioned that the young man in Goethe wrote about Sturm und Drang, right? But that's normal. That is in young people. We have to go out and try something new and go against what we have, right? This is something new can be created, that we find ourselves, and not only the influences from others. And that is also what you bring into life, that we don't have to do the push. It can also just be a gentle pull. And that we can give ourselves so many gifts ourselves. That's what I hear also and notice in you. You give yourself the gift of you, and you give the gift of you to others so they can give their gift to themselves.
Yes, beautiful, 100%. And that's such a good point because I mean, in this day and age, we have access to so more spiritual teachings and teachers and techniques than ever. Plant medicines are really coming into the mainstream, which I think can have many, many gifts. And at the same time, there's also a backside to everything. Plant medicines, meditations, just going to all sorts of teachers. Um, we can also harm ourselves. You know, there are plenty of studies on meditation, the negative side effects of meditation, or people who do too much plant medicines, or they do it in an imbalanced way and they cannot integrate the teachings. Dark retreats, another example that can go really, really wrong. And what I really love is the soul itself, your heart is the safety mechanism. So we only hurt ourselves when we're pushing or pulling, when we're avoiding or pushing from ego desires like, oh, it would be awesome to do like 30 days of plant medicine in a row, or it would be awesome to push myself in these extreme ways. That's often when we get hurt, when we're listening to the mind. But if we just come back to the soul, there is a deeper knowing that's attuned to our soul wisdom. And it might be extreme from other people's perspective, but as long as you're in your soul knowing, that's a kind of safety mechanism that ensures things will go much more smoothly and you'll avoid major hurdles that aren't meant to be part of your soul path. It doesn't mean we're going to avoid hurdles because we need hurdles in order to grow also.
Yeah. And if we don't get the hurdles, I always think my cats pushed me to the next plateau
Yes.
every single time. And it comes from a direction you don't think about it. Yeah, it is I say sometimes it's the need. You feel that there is a need, and we don't have to act if there's a need. And you also feel and you can trust yourself if there's a need, even sometimes for an extreme. And then the body does it anyway. So whatever, that's what some people say, oh, they're the rebels. But they rebels, that's the moment when you know you just have to go or do. And it can be in a year or two, or maybe it's simmering in your head. And suddenly, maybe a few years later, you go out, it could be tomorrow. And that then you follow your own understanding. And yeah, but it starts something with the test. And I think also then through experience, uh, you learned, Matteo, as I did, or and many others, then to finite what is needed more and more. Like with the teacher, we have many questions, but I remember most teachers, they don't tell you anything. They wait for you to ask the right question and they say maybe yes or no, and that's it. And then
Yeah.
we have to discover ourselves. So you are an, oh, example is the raw. I don't like the word, it doesn't fit. But in a way, you're an example, a way shower of what can be done in a different way. And that it brings, because you're so calm, you're so peaceful within your voice. It is dropped. I bet your voice has dropped since you've done this word. It's gone into its own typical uh, resonance. Your whole body language, the way you speak, nothing can rattle you. Like rattle your cage is maybe a good expression in English. You know what you are. And I think that's also what you're helping people with, to support them in learning about themselves, and then to the point of recognition and acknowledgement, how they function and what they are, so they can fall into themselves. It's like a settlement. You have settled into yourself. And from that settlement, now even the vastness, you can explore even more vastness. It's like you settle in, you expand. It's like bodybuilding, right? You settle in, you expand. Every time we tighten, we can expand further. Sometimes this and tightening, as you said, can be maybe a little painful in yours. It's probably not anymore. But for some people, but then there is a joy when you cry in it, you cry with joy and laughter, which I bet you have experienced and others have experienced too. And then you know that you're on the right path and that it was just a moment, this hurdle or these depths of tears, a release. So we as a being can go on and be more of who we are.
Beautiful, 100%. And I know life can be very painful for many quote unquote souls. I put that in quotes because even that reality starts changing as we dissolve more into the whole. But I know life can be very painful because I experienced that. I was probably one of the angriest people I knew. I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of anxiety that I had to work through from my childhood, from previous incarnations, or even in my genetic, we have genetic codes that we get to transform from our ancestors. So it's clear to me that on some level I chose that. I chose to go through all of that because it builds compassion. If you don't experience pain yourself, it's very difficult to have compassion for other people in that situation. You are kind of like the master who cannot relate. So it's better to go through all of those stages and for me view myself as everyone else. We're all in the same boat, and we all go through different stages of pain, but we all have that same potential to live as our awakened nature. It is our natural state, and it's available to all of us. And life without that is really not worth it. I have been very blessed to experience the heights of material existence. I have also many friends who have pursued the material path very deeply and have achieved very high states of success. And I wouldn't say it doesn't matter. It certainly matters because it's one aspect of this reality to master. It's one dimension to master, and it is important for our embodiment. So I don't agree that no, the world of materiality doesn't matter. No, it's an expression of God, and we come here to also master that existence. Because often to become successful materially also invites us, if we do it in alignment with our soul, to master our emotions, to master our thoughts, to master being able to structure, systematize, have a vision, and guide others. So it's actually only a way for the soul to learn a lot of very 3D skill sets. But if we only do that, we will not have profound joy. We will not have profound peace because that can only come from knowing your true nature.
Mhm. And connectivity to everything that is existing
Mm.
comes because that is also the material world, and we are in a material body. Many of us can go into the non-material, yes, right, and get information, be connected. But knowing we're connected and part with
Yeah.
everything that is existing, that we're one. And
Yes.
everything is one with us. This is very important. Not that we're just one with everything, but also to understand that everything is one with us. That you are is important. I always sense, right? We're taught not to be important, but everyone is important because we're here on this planet right now together,
Yes. Yes.
together, and to treat each other with that recognition, with that acknowledgement. Again, human beings, how we treat animals, how we treat our food, how we treat our plants, our beautiful earth that we begin as to repair ourselves or repair. We understand and heal. You work a lot also with traumatas, especially in the young child age, that we can act then and bring change, physical change, because we're here on this beautiful earth to do things when it's needed and to implement. Each person has another gift. But when we go into that natural state, what you're teaching people, Mateo, and have like you're a man who walks his talk, but your talk is not just talk. Your talk is the embodied wisdom. The words you speak are chosen really wise, they come automatic, but you've explored and trained yourself through all these experiences, or it was really important for you, or you felt the need that it has to be true words, that you want to go back to the principle of what is, and not the all, like if you go with paint over things to cover things up, you uncover, you peel back for thousands of people every time you do something. 100,000 people, the more you probably touch millions. Not probably, you do touch millions when everything you do. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for seeing that. 100%. If it's not embodied, if it's not lived, if it's not touching every millimeter and ounce of my life, I have never been interested in it because I met, of course, many really beautiful spiritual practitioners. And I also met some where it just didn't resonate because it sounded nice and beautiful. But then if I don't see it and feel it in every aspect of being, I just had no interest in that. I'm very practically oriented, and it should, for me, infuse everything. It should infuse my business, my relationships, how I walk down the street, how I drive. It should doesn't mean that we're moralistic or perfectionistic or trying to do it right. Right? There is a lot of shame and perfectionism often in spirituality also. It just means it's a luxury. We get to practice being more and more love. That's like the greatest, funnest game one can ever play because the more you love, the more you win. So it's really a gift
Yes.
that we get to experience being greater and greater love. It's not a pressure. Oh, I get to release more of my ego. I get to release more of my attachments. How wonderful. Even at maybe as I'm crying and I feel a little bit sorry for myself. It's okay, but this is the game.
Yeah. I have to say yes, because that happens to me. Every ritual, everything I learn new, the more yes, yes. It's
Yes.
like every time falling, it's fun. All those tears,
Yes.
that they're gone in a second because there is this, like it feels always like a release again, this over and over release. No, yeah, maybe I'm addicted to that if you want to, but I think it's not the addiction. We all sense there's more to us than we're experiencing, and I welcome many more rituals back in. We're learning from many other cultures, right? Well, many were wiped out in on this earth. I mean, the last 8,000 years, or maybe a few more, but they're coming back. They're being discovered through ways like you're doing. Even I've been hearing that from others. They go into strong moments, a physical change, so they can bring back ancient wisdom, old wisdom, which is really not new, but it has been here once in this on this earth, and we know about it, and we are supported, like you teachers from the spirit realm, this or light being, um, supporting you in recognizing and bringing new ways or old ways. It's one, right? There's no time jump, but that it's being materialized, and that's why the embodiment is so important. And I invite everyone to explore what your body is physically able to do. We're able to do so much more if it's now like the 49 days in the darkness that Mateo has done, or you walk long distances, or you speed up, or whatever is there within you. Go and explore, or maybe even being still for a certain time and not move and practice that, or just turn off a television. vision or a telephone. And be courageous to explore yourself. And you probably have many, 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 many tips, Matteo, through all your teachings. How can people or where can people connect with you and learn about you? I know you teach in Dubai, you teach also in Asia a lot. Tell us more.
Yeah, I live in between Asia and the Emirates, and but most of my work is online, although I also do physical retreats all over the world. The best place to find me is arianmateo.com or on my Instagram. I am Arian Mateo. Those are good contact points if you're curious to get in touch with me. And yeah, I just wanted to add the piece that the greatest miracle or the greatest power for me that I have found is one, the power of love, and as an extension of that, the power of liberation. Right? It's probably the greatest achievement anybody can achieve is the power to liberate your own suffering, to liberate your own identifications. And no amount of money, no amount of spiritual gifts or talents, no amount of power, no amount of anything really compares to that, because you can have all the power in the world, you can have all the spiritual abilities, but if you cannot even liberate a single thought and find liberation from your suffering, what's it all worth? So that to me is really the greatest power or the greatest love in possible as a human being. And many of the mystics say this. It's not something I'm saying for the first time. This is really a theme that what are you going to do with all the spiritual or material riches and wealth of the whole world if you cannot even liberate your own suffering?
Oh, beautiful. I was going to ask you to say, but that's it. The power of liberation. You don't hear it so often. You
Mm.
hear it because you this is what you understand. But this is a simple, and it can be a simple exercise. And I know you have published 3 books. You have meditations for people. I'll put something also in the show notes
Yeah.
how they can find you and explore you a little bit. But this is nice. So even after this episode, you can practice maybe just closing your eyes, everyone, for a little bit. 5 minutes, 10 minutes in a hustle and bustle in the moments normally you wouldn't do it. And maybe even as if you're a woman and you cook for your family, before you start cooking, close your eyes for a minute. Um, See what things you're putting into the pot or the uh, what you're going kind of dish you're creating, and acknowledge it and go into connection with it. It will give you a lot, and this love of liberation, I love that, love of liberation, goes into your dish for the loved ones you feed and yourself who you feed. I had to put that in there. It just came
Yes.
through you, Matteo. It's so
Yes.
beautiful. We can do it any second for ourselves and others.
Yes. And I just want to add a point to that. Sometimes we can feel a little bit overwhelmed by spiritual teachings because we're like, well, I don't know. I don't even know what meditation is. Look, I've been meditating for many lifetimes, and in this lifetime, at least 14 years very intensely. And still, I'm discovering subtleties of what meditation really is. So, of course, for a beginner, it can feel overwhelming. Well, what am I supposed to do? Watch my breath, or am I supposed to visualize? And I have books that go a little bit into that. I can also point people, if they get in touch with me, to some resources. But for now, I just want to also simplify it. This liberation, you don't have to view it as some big, overwhelming thing that's totally out of reach for you. This is something we have all experienced in small moments of our life. In that moment where you chose to let go of a grudge, or in that moment where you chose to just not go into a worry, or you almost got in an argument with your partner or a friend, but you chose to make a different choice, to choose love instead. Those are all moments of liberation. Those are all some part of you that knows a deeper wisdom. So if you can take just that wisdom you knew in this moment and start applying it to just tiny bit more moments in your life, you can start extending this flavor or taste of liberation. All spiritual practice is just about that. Have the taste of what it is and then extend it to more and more moments. So please to the listeners, this is something also very simple. It seems advanced because we got so muddled up in our thoughts, but at its root, it's something everybody knows this very intuitively in their heart. So just try practicing with the small things, and slowly you'll be able to practice with the bigger things.
You to build upon what you can find, feel in the moment, and do in the moment.
Yes.
And it's an automatic then.
Mm.
We could go on for hours, Matteo. We could be now here also in silence, which would work on the video, but not so much on the podcast. You exuberate? I think that's the right word.
Mhm.
So much light, quietness, peacefulness, gentleness, sovereignty, preciousness, preciousness of the moment that touches, goes out. I mean, I'm here in Germany feeling you. You're in Dubai at the moment, in the Emirates, far away.
I'm in
This is so
Dubai, feeling
beautiful.
you, right? We're all
Yeah,
interconnected, no distance, really.
this is amazing. And I think, as you said, whoever, when you start small or start big, but one thing is important, we're really connected and you're never alone. So
Yes.
please do not be scared to start exploring yourself because you have two beings right here, but there are many, 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 many more. So everyone, be who you are. You're beautiful as you are, and you're bringing beauty to this planet and to me and to Matteo. So thank you everyone for listening, for watching. Matteo, thank you very much for taking the time to bringing your wisdom, your presence, your body to this beautiful show. I wish you also the best, and I'm curious what it's gonna develop for you, what you are still going to create. You have many, 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 many decades. I would even say centuries to go. So, everyone, I am Eileen, your host of the Moving to Oneness podcast. I wish you the best. Bye bye.